Okay, guys, it's Andy from Man City Fan TV. I'm here with John Dillon, and obviously this has come about because of the interview at the weekend on TalkSport with Georgie Bingham on the weekend breakfast show with Tony Cascarino as well. So that happened on Saturday, the 10th of November. But before we get into it, what I'd like to ask you, John, is why did you contact me at Man City Fan TV?
Well, clearly, I mean, look, I'll set out here first of all. You know, the first thing I want to say is, and we'll come on to the reasons for it, but I want to offer a sincere apology to anyone who's been offended by this. You know, it's one of those combination of bad events things. You know, so I'll say that now, but I'll expand upon that later. I got in touch because I've been told. Well, I attempted to contact you via Twitter. Yeah. Having seen the reaction to what I'd said on Twitter on Saturday, and I attempted to contact you. I mean, clearly, you know, having a look around online, you know, the fan TV thing, you know, gets to a lot of people. So I thought you'd probably be a good conduit to contact in that way. And I mean, then I was also told, and I don't know how, it didn't appear on my Twitter feed or whatever, that you had some questions for me, and I felt sort of duty bound, really, as a professional and as a football fan and whatever, to talk to you about it and answer what you wanted to know, basically.
Okay, well, we appreciate you coming on and being honest. If we deal firstly with the David Silva comment, as that's what obviously prompted the outrage on social media, Twitter in particular, and not just by Man City fans, but by football fans in general, because it wasn't just City, there was United, Liverpool, Arsenal fans as well making comments. Now, if we were to listen to the audio, now, I don't know whether you want to do this or you don't, but I've got the audio here, just of that little clip.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, if we play the audio, it's only a minute or so, but to give some context to what we're talking about, and hopefully people will be able to listen to this.
True.
Interestingly, City-wise, at the other end of the scale, and if you were a real cynic, you might have some views about this. They've put up David Silva for interview about
his baby.
About his baby, you know. After a week in which City have had a very, very bad week in terms of headlines and stuff, there's a good human piece with one of their greatest players appeared on the Saturday morning.
And it's a really lovely interview. He's very honest, David. I mean, I think David Silva is one of my favourite players at City, because I think he's a bit like Aguero in a funny way, so ridiculously underrated in terms of world football. He's just quietly gone about his business for so long.
And I'll tell you what, Pep Guardiola has handled him and give him the right sentiment to do what he felt was right at the time with regards to his son. And just great management. The whole story, if you put it all together, how Pep manages his squad of players and shows...
He's arguably got the luxury of not having to rush David Silva back to play, whereas maybe some managers might. But yeah,
Sterling is another example.
Whatever they need.
Of what he's done. I mean, you can't really separate the money thing from the City debate, because Guardiola has been able to apply his talent and his man management skills to this squad, partly because of the kind of players he's been able to bring in, and now particularly, that City are the one club who are able to identify exactly who they want for every position.
I think we have to be a little bit careful, John. We have to be careful. They haven't broken a world record fee for a player.
No.
They've assembled a squad, and there's a brilliant amount of hard work that's gone into that. And there's been many a club that have,
but they've done it after the rules.
I would have nothing against massive spending by a club.
Not when the rules
Manchester
say you
United
can't.
went out and spent £400 million on a player. That's their business, and their fans would love it. And let's face it, we are talking about one of the biggest industries in the world now, football, certainly in terms of the entertainment industry. So it's going to operate in that way. And at the top level, it's going to be about big money. However, rules are in place to ensure
I'm not even sure the rules are that well policed anyway.
That money is, the difference between Manchester United and Man City is whatever people think about the Glazers, United earn their money, in the marketplace.
Okay, so we're back. So What are your thoughts on that particular clip? And I have just taken that clip in isolation, just so that people who obviously on social media or follow our channel may have heard or read a lot of comments, but I've not actually heard the clip for real. What I'll do is I will play the audio if it's not loud enough. I will play the clip over the top of what we've just videoed there.
Yeah, well, I couldn't actually hear that playback just as
Okay.
you did that. I guess that's the technology at work. But as I recall it, that I mean, people are going to take this as they will, and I understand that, because part of what I said was attempting to sort of highlight people's skepticism. So I've got to expect that people are maybe going to be skeptical about me. But as I recall it, it's a live show. And the comment in particular which upset people was the last 15 or 20 seconds. I'd sort of finished talking about various other issues, and there's this 15 second sort of anything else thing, and I said, yes, we've been talking about City and the coverage of the financial fair play issue and what Jurgen Klopp had to say about it yesterday. And I pointed out, I said, here's I think the phrase I used was at the other end of the scale, here's a very human piece about City, the interview with David Silva about sort of the trauma he and his family had been through with the premature baby. Now, I'll hold my hands up here. In the rush, I didn't articulate this very well at all. I went on to say that the extremely cynical might wonder about the timing of the appearance of this story at the end of a week of bad headlines for City. I did make the point that a different kind of PR on focusing on a human story would be welcomed by City, and I'm sure it would be. There are many issues always going on at all football clubs. So. I thought that I'm attempting to sort of review the papers and explain why certain stories appear or why things that, the role when you go on to do that paper review is to be a journalist and then try to explain to the public how the media works, how newspapers works, why certain things get covered, why others don't, why there's, and so I made that point about it being a change of focus after the week City have had. And then I sort of blundered in very, very poorly in the hurry as the thing's counting down. I made the point about an extreme cynic might wonder about the timing of this, and it's a suggestion that the stories appeared to try to deflect attention from the bad publicity that City had. My actual intention was to try to say that people are the wider readership, if you like, and particularly fans of rival clubs and stuff in what is a very tribal era in football, might be sceptical about the timing of the appearances. I didn't suggest that City had deliberately planted it. My suggestion, which was too clever by half, basically, and too nuanced, was to wonder whether rival fans and the other tribes, if you like, would look at it in that way. It was said very quickly. It was put very clumsily and awkwardly, and that's what's causing. I mean, I didn't actually refer to David Silva and the baby or anything like that. It was just about the appearance of the piece, But I accept fully that the way I articulated it did not convey what my actual thought was. All I can say is every time we appear on television or radio or whatever, you're only 1-2 seconds away from making this kind of mistake. We all do it as you're talking. You don't always, you don't always get things across possibly. I've long wondered how myself and my colleagues, when we're doing things like Sunday Supplement and that, as I used to, how we sort of don't blunder into swearing and stuff, because you're not thinking about when you're sat there talking on TV or radio, you're not actually thinking that you're on TV or radio. You're thinking about the point you're trying to make, and so I fell into that trap. I've not fallen into that before, it came across very, very badly, and I understand completely why people took it the way they did, but it wasn't my intention to suggest that in any way. It was more about there's already a sceptical mood about City among the rival readerships, if you like, because there's been a week-long focus. I mean, the Football League stuff had been going on all week, hadn't it? So it's been a very, very big story and the cause of a lot of debate. So to reiterate it again, that's what I was trying to say, but I put it in a very bad way, and then bang, suddenly the show's finished, and that's what's left hanging in the air. So there has been a ferocious reaction on Twitter. We know what the Twitter arena can be like, and I accept that and will take that on the chin. But again, as well, I mean, whatever the rights and wrongs here, I would like to offer a sincere apology to anyone who has been offended, just out of respect for the fact that if offence has been caused, it wasn't my intention in any way whatsoever. It was just, I've been doing this a long time, so I think about it a lot, and you look at issues and you see things going on, sort of a progression of events, and that's why you're thinking, I wonder how that story is going to play with this group of people or whatever. I guess it's part of what we do as but there are lots of programs on analysing the media itself, every day. So that's what I was thinking, but it came out very, very badly. And again, I apologise to anyone who has been offended. I'd also like to point out that, look, I've been doing this one way or another for 30 odd years, and as I said to you in my email, Andy, I've no track record whatsoever of cheap, nasty, provocative, ill-founded comment or whatever. I've got things wrong, or I've had opinions wrong, or whatever. Fine, but in 30 years, I've no track record of that kind of behaviour whatsoever. So at 55, why would I start now? Deliberately. That's what I would add.
Okay. Well, thanks for putting that point across. I just wrote when I was listening to it again this morning, knowing that we were going to do this, and obviously there was the word cynic, and you backed that up in your explanation there. But there wasn't just the cynic comment. You also said they've put David Silva up for interview about his baby, so they implying Manchester City. Yeah. And then you went on to, as you rightly said, after a week when City have had very, very bad week in terms of headlines and stuff, there's a good human piece, which absolutely it was. But what you also inferred, not only just about cynical, if you were a real cynic, you'd think that this was done on purpose by Manchester City, but it's the fact that Manchester City were the ones who put David Silva up. And this wasn't for Man City TV. This was for the Premier League show. So this was something, and about the charity. This was nothing to do with Manchester City. I see where you made the comment coming from, but it wasn't just the cynical comment. It was also the fact that you were actually inferring it was Man City that did this as well.
Well, that wasn't meant that way. I mean, clearly, any interview with any player, the City media staff will be involved in the arrangement of it. The Premier League TV couldn't just turn up at the training ground and interview a player. Well, just in terms of logistics, these things have to be arranged. And again, that's what I was saying. As I said in the rush, I put it all awfully. I'd like to think that people understand that that we've all been there, and you've said something, and afterwards you think. It's like I've been beating myself up about this mentally, ever since, basically, because you know what it's like. You turn these things over and over in your mind again afterwards,
Yes.
And that's further to the clumsy, hurried way that I was trying to make. But I make no bones about it, and I hope I hope it's not seen as an excuse. It's a reason, that I cocked up. Basically, I put it in all the wrong way. I'll fall back on saying I've never deliberately done anything like this before. So why would I set out deliberately to do that now? It was just a point that I thought was legitimate in a review of the papers to wonder what, I mean, it's as you will know, it's ferocious out there in the, and particularly between the big clubs in the north, the sort of the levels of debate that take place on social media it's like a war zone, isn't it? So I was thinking, well, this will be more grist to the mill for that, and it squirted out in very poorly.
Okay, just do me a favour. Can you just put your laptop just forward, the top of it forward? That's it. It's only because I'm just getting out of your face.
I'm actually on the phone and it's gone.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I didn't
realise I was so low on juice. I'm just going to have to move and plug myself into a charger.
Okay.
How's that? Now you've gone brighter again. I hope that I have as well.
Yeah. That's perfect.
How's that?
Yeah. Okay. So. Okay, we've heard your explanation with regards to obviously the comments surrounding the David Silva thing, which obviously started all this off. I think it'd be remiss of me listening back onto the whole conversation on TalkSport, not just the David Silva comments that started this whole thing. Was you started the paper review and you were talking about the headline over Pep versus Jose, and so you made a comment about the bust up and the rows, and saying the general public will be hoping the headlines on Monday morning will be about Pep and Jose back at each other's throats. So is it more about headlines or is it more about football? Because it seems by that comment, this was the very first part of your sort of headline review. You were reviewing the head. I know they weren't your headlines, but there were comments about sort of that the Jose versus Pep. It's all gone a bit quiet and nicey. But then you sort of went on to say, let's hope, I'm sure the fans will want this at each other's throats again on Monday morning. And it seemed more of headline making rather than talking about the actual match or football.
Well, look, I'm talking about this now separately from the other issue. I mean, I as I said, I hope I've at least got my point across. Yeah.
If you can lower your
sorry,
bit.
Yeah.
That's it.
Look, to that point, that's how I began the review. That was the back page of the Sun. I think the headline was something like "Loving" or something. The point I made was that was unusual. Normally, the back pages are about rows and bust-ups, and I made the point that this is different. They're both praising each other. And I think I said probably after the week both teams had with City scoring 12 goals in the two previous games, and United having beaten Juventus, it probably wasn't a good time for them to be criticising each other anyway. My point was, it was different from what the normal service is. Normally, the back pages are about rows and conflict and whatever, because that's news, I mean, and the Premier League is a huge soap opera. It's a huge drama. When I'm talking about the public hoping that they'll be back at each other's throats, look, when managers do clash on the touchline or when they row or whatever, it's all over television. It's all over Sky Sports News. It's all over the back pages because that's what the public want. That's news. I mean, it's the way of the world. I mean, the way of the world is, if you like, is that conflict and rows and issues are more newsy than nicey, if you like, But I mean, the Sun, I think, quite rightly had identified sort of, this is a bit of a change from the norm, and that's why we'll go on the back page with this, But the comment was just about the general overheated soap opera that the Premier League is, which is why it's so vast. It seems to dominate the planet, basically, doesn't it?
So what we're saying really is that headlines sell papers, and headlines are more important than the football that's being played.
Well, in terms of newspapers, they are. Newspapers are businesses, and they take a robust attitude. Depending on whereabouts in the market they are, they take a robust attitude to campaign. I don't think you can separate the two and say that the headlines matter and the football don't. it's all mixed in with each other, you know. I mean, and football is followed in a robust, impassioned way in this country, probably more than anywhere else, actually, whatever the arguments about the new camp and that are. And similarly, newspapers cover it in that way. It's a two-way street, if you see what I mean. And it's not that one's more important than the other. They're all part of a big melting pot of the whole thing, basically. You know, it's like Match of the Day on the Saturday night, isn't it? You know, or you could almost sometimes wonder if they might rename that show "Was It a Penalty?" You know, because there is a hell of a lot of focus on whether certain issues were penalties or not. It's not going to change anything. You know, not going to rewind time and unaward the penalty or whatever. But it's debated. You know, sort of at great length, and that's an example of it's just a huge melting pot of opinion, of incident, opinion, drama, partisanship, passion, and you know, so that's why newspapers focus upon things the way they do, because it's the way the game is.
Okay, so on that point then, and this is nothing to do with your newspaper or whoever you freelance for, but you tweeted recently, football being played by Man City, PlayStation football brought to life by financial doping. Would you prefer to be right in about Pep or Jose, or would you rather be, you know, them be at each other's throats, or would you rather be sort of talking about FFP because it's in the news? Now, you've said about PlayStation football, and I agree, it is PlayStation football, but was there any need to be adding the comment on Twitter, brought to life by financial doping? It's sort of like it's the only reason why City are playing the football they're playing is because of financial doping, which has yet to be proven.
Well, I mean, okay, first of all, PlayStation football, right? Sometimes watching City is exhilarating because they play such wonderful football, and at other times they're so dominant that you think that there's some sort of competitive edge lacking, you know, in terms of being a viewer of the game on TV or whatever. Financial doping is the phrase that Arsene Wenger coined some time ago to address the issues which the financial fair play rules then addressed. And again, I don't think you can separate the two. I mean, I've said many times actually on Talk Sport that there was a key part of what Guardiola has achieved at City I was wrong about. I thought the kind of football he plays and what he'd done at Barcelona and Bayern Munich, the way he'd achieved it was because, you know, the league competition there isn't so intense, not so many fixtures and stuff. You get more time in better conditions, if you like, on the training ground to embed that very particular style of football that he plays. And of course, he's gone and done it, basically, you know. And I thought the mud and the wind and whatever, you know, the fact that players get injured here more because the game's more robust, I thought that would prevent him from nailing down that way he goes about the game. But he's pulled it off. He's done it, and you know they are playing the exact Guardiola brand of football that we would have expected. However, the point is, I mean, part of City's success that they're very good at identifying the players they want to buy as well to fit into that particular system. They've probably been more successful than any other club in buying the players to fit. They sort of more or less got two teams to play football that way, you know. But when Guardiola,
when you on that point, but when you look at the expenditure at Manchester City, let's say, you know, forget pre-Guardiola, because yes, we had to massively spend to break into this conglomerate at the top to get in there, and we had to do it quickly, and we did. And there's no City fan would ever sit here and say, "Oh yeah, but we've not spent any money." Of course, we spent money, but if you look at what Pep spent compared to what Klopp has spent, compared to what Mourinho spent, and like you've just said in your own words, City as a club and Pep Guardiola and Cheeky and Ferran and whoever, they've identified the right people for the right job, you know. But we get called for it. Nobody ever, rarely do people come out and say, yes, they spent money, but they spent it exceptionally well compared to the way Jose Mourinho has spent his money. There is a point where, you get to a certain point in a statement and it never just gets clarified further with regards to.
I wouldn't be expecting you to do this, but if you were to trawl through various of the columns I've written in recent times for the Standard in London, I have made that point in there that whatever the levels of expenditure have been.
John, just stop you there for a minute, because this is one of my points I wanted to bring up, and I'm sort of digressing between what I wanted to talk about later. But you wrote an article in the Evening Standard recently, and it was about this new breakaway league and things like that, and you were talking about it. And I read through that in depth, and I got to one part, and I was waiting. I was actually being cynical myself. I was waiting for the where's the Man City comment, and it didn't come through until towards the end. And I was thinking, right, okay. And you said in that comment, in that article, that affects every supporter, especially those concerned that the clubs and the players are spinning wildly away from them into some ever more remote stratosphere of the corporate world. And I'm not saying I disagree with some of your comments. So big, so wealthy, so commercially powerful, and so ravenously marketed, it seems that all connection with those on the ground is being lost. I agree. You then went on to say, you guess, however, these plans are actually the inevitable next step after the takeover of many big clubs, particularly in England, by such sources of financial might. Manchester City are jointly owned by Abu Dhabi and the Chinese government, for example. Why not own the competitions in which these teams play too? You then went on to say, even in this rampantly corporate age of the game, supporters of the elite clubs, that's Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Juventus, and Bayern Munich as well. No mention to Manchester United in that. Of the knowledge that
earlier on in the piece,
competitions.
I believe United are mentioned earlier on in the piece, and that's why it says as well.
No. You mentioned United after you've made that comment. It's after. Up to that point, you didn't mention Manchester United whatsoever. So you basically said, in this corporate age of the game, supporters of the elite clubs, that's Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Juventus, and Bayern Munich. No mention of Real Madrid, Barcelona, or Manchester United, in fact, who, when we talk about David Gill and all of the Der Spiegel and the, who are they working for? One of those clubs you mentioned in that article, Bayern Munich. It just seems that sometimes, as a City fan, and I'm not talking about fans in general, I'm talking now at being subjective, you read that and go, where's the Manchester United comment in that? Where's this? Why us? And then there's no mention there of Chelsea.
I'll try and find it I'll try and find it now.
I've got it here on my phone.
Right. Well, I mean, that sentence was written with me in having it in my mind that I'd already mentioned, if you like, the three biggest, in terms of Forbes and whatever clubs, being United, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. I've written that sentence thinking I've already mentioned them. It's not any. Why wouldn't I mention them among the elite? If that's happened, it's a mistake. I'll try and find the copy that I filed, if you like, because sometimes, of course, things do go astray or get edited or whatever.
For the sake of timing, obviously. If you find it, we'll come back to it and discuss it later. But
I mean, just to clarify that, there's no reason I would leave Manchester United, Barcelona, and Real Madrid out of the elite. They're among the clubs who were mentioned in the Football Leagues thing about the breakaway league. So
just going back to the Talk Sport interview on the Footy League stuff, which obviously has been massive last week and is still probably ongoing. You actually said that City haven't come out and denied it. You actually used those words. Well, City are currently, as you well know, consulting their lawyers. Would you expect Manchester City to come out and make any definitive statement one way or the other at this moment in time after what's been published? Now, you cannot honestly expect Manchester City as a club to come out and make a statement one way or the other. They've just basically said.
Well, the fact is they issued a carefully worded statement which didn't deny.
Carefully.
And very often, big corporate organisations will deny things. I mean, look, part of this, the nature of Manchester City has, changed drastically one day in 2008, didn't it? And with success and with the kind of, the sort of the global size of the club now, with that comes far greater attention, interest, and scrutiny from the media. I know lots of fans like to think that journalists have agendas against their club and stuff, and it's just not feasible that the media could come together and draw up agendas about certain football clubs. It's the newspaper and TV and radio industry. It's all too fast moving for that to happen. I know that you felt that that City had been under fire particularly, but
I mean,
via the information that had been released by Football via Der Spiegel, but it's anything to do with Manchester City is news, and these are the big serious issues, about the way, the big serious issues are being investigated about the way City have been financed, and the media would not be doing its duty if it didn't report and analyse the allegations that are being made.
No, that's fair enough. I totally understand that. I get that. I absolutely get it. I'm not stupid. I'm not one of these stupid fans who go, "Oh, they shouldn't report about it." Absolutely. Don't. It for me, it's the terminology and it's the intonation in the way that these things are said, and it's things like you mentioned in that talk sport. And I'll go on to something else. Just one second. If you can just give me 1 minute. You turned around and said, all you have to do is join up the dots. They were your words, not mine. You said, everyone should see it. All you have to do is join up the dots. Now, what? Join up the dots as to who Der Spiegel are and who they're working for. Join up the dots as to how they came about getting this information, which by all accounts allegedly is illegal. So join up where's the conversation about who are these people? Who are they working for? And what are some of the other reasons why they publish things that are pro Bayern Munich and their owners and their board? Nothing's ever discussed about it. It's just like gets jumped upon. And my next point, before I let you have another say, because I think I've given you plenty of airtime, is you accuse fans on the TalkSport radio show on Saturday morning of not. Well, you accuse fans, football fans in general, of not caring about the Footy Leaks expose, which, fine, fair enough. You said City haven't issued an outright denial. You then went on to say, and for City fans to be getting up in arms about why they're doing this to us, they're all just jealous. Why can't we do what we like? Really, when have you ever heard Man City fans in general say, we should be able to do what we like? There are millions of football fans listening to Talk Sport, and what you're basically saying that we as City fans turn around and have this arrogant attitude that this alleged email stated from somebody within City that we can do what we like. We have never ever, and I've never read anywhere on Twitter, social media, comments, whatever on our videos where City fans are saying we can do what we like, get away from us. You're all just jealous, and that is not the honestly, that is not the attitude of most Man City fans. I've seen plenty of comments on social media and at the foot of newspaper stories about this, suggesting that there's a witch hunt against City because of what they've become. I never said anything about a witch hunt. I just turned around and said, those are the comments. That's the tone of. Well, you asked me about that issue. That's you saying we're saying we can do what we like. I've never read that, and if I have it'd be some pathetic keyboard warrior who said something like that. If you look at most City fans, and to be fair, there was a further comment by Georgie Bingham. This wasn't you. This was Georgie Bingham later in the interview, where she turned around, and I've got my notes here. She turned around and claimed that City fans weren't around in the bad old days. If you look at statistics and research, City have got one of the oldest fan bases that have been following out the whole of the Premier League. We're not 18-year-olds. We were there in the
when
most of us.
That's when I referred, wasn't it, to the "We're Not Really Here" song? I think, didn't I, during the programme?
Yeah, and we've all
make the point. I mean, that's an ironic comment upon, we're not really here down in the third division, and you can look at it the other way: is how much things have changed. We're not really here in this position that City are in now.
Absolutely. We've still got a sense of humour even now. We've still got that City-itis. It makes no difference. It's still there. It's embedded in the majority of fans who go to the Etihad and go to away games week in, week out. We're laughing at ourselves and the club and the competition.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to your point, I have seen lots of comments from people saying, why don't they leave us alone? Everybody's at it. There's two debates here, isn't there? There's one about whether rules have been broken, and the other one is, what is the purpose of the rules, and is their purpose any good? Were they drawn up to sort of protect the existing elite so it's a two-stranded debate, isn't it? But in response to the first part of it, I have heard and seen comments about why are they picking on City again?
Nobody's disagreeing in that. I turned around and said, why are they picking on City again? I've said that. What I'm saying is that you made a comment on Talk Sport that I turned around and said, they're just jealous. Why can't we do what we like? Now, I haven't read any City fan turn around and say that on social media. I really have.
I have, and I'm not saying they're jealous. That's the impression I've got from some of the comments I've seen.
Well, if you can post that to me, I'll put it on the video, because I've not read anyone on my timeline on Twitter or anybody below any of the videos we've done about.
I think I'm referring to comments on the end of newspaper stories. Now, by the way, I've just found the piece that you were referring to earlier on about the plans for the World League, and it's there in the third paragraph. It could usurp both the League and the Champions League, but it could also make Manchester United, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and the rest even wealthier.
Yeah.
So just to clear that up, I had mentioned United. I mean, I presume that's the piece you're referring to. Yeah. If you thought football had changed a lot during the last 10 years, wait until you see what's coming.
Not sure it was that one, but I can always look it up anyway.
Further down, it's there. Even in this rampantly corporatised of the game, supporters of the elite clubs, that's Manchester City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Juventus, and Bayern Munich as well. Yeah, that's well down, because in the third paragraph, it refers to Manchester United, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and the rest.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's very difficult for journalists. I guess in a way, journalists baffle fans, and fans baffle journalists in many ways.
I'll give you an example. We'll talk about that. That's actually a good point, and I think it's something that is worthy of debate, because I think most City fans are intelligent enough to separate between the ones who make stupid comments, and I'm talking about fans here, and the ones who can accept that possibly something has happened and we'll wait and see. But what we don't like is some of the ridiculous statements that are made and the terminology. I mean, put it this way. Here's 2 points that I want to just quickly finish on, and then I'll give you your last say to all the City fans and the fans and whatever else. Georgie Bingham and you both, throughout that interview, you both referred to Manchester City as a regime. Both of you said that. Now, can you explain to me what the word regime means?
It's in football terms. The
word.
A regime is a regime. I don't know what would the dictionary definition of it be. I would be, I guess, any form of body that's in control of something. So
yeah, it's a government. It's a government, especially of an authoritarian one. That's what the regime. That's what the Oxford Dictionary claims a regime is. So use the word.
We talk about journalists use in the course of writing pieces, if you like. Journalists try to use different words for things just for the sake of variety and rhythm and stuff. So you'll see, boardroom, hierarchy, regime,
Hierarchy, fine. It's in everyday
brain
business.
or whatever. We talk about, it's just a way of trying to keep pieces sort of. There's nothing sinister about it. It's just, sort of. Newspapers like to keep the copy lively, so different words are used. It's like, you'll see one minute, Charlie Harris of Chelsea or whatever, and in the next sentence he's referred to as the 23-year-old midfielder. In the next sentence he's referred to as the former Arsenal starlet, and so on and so on. It's just a way that the media uses to keep the language varied, basically, and not repetitive.
Like joining the dots, like that type of language.
Yes, well, look, some people will join the dots about. Look, I mean, the fact is that Manchester City are in the position that they are because there's been a massive injection of wealth into the club. Subsequently, it's come under examination, particularly in Germany in the last week, about the sources of that wealth and how they're applied to the development of the football club. So, when I talk about joining the, you're following a football debate. I'm not suggesting that people are setting out, or that I'm setting out to deliberately draw a conclusion. It's joining the dots means following the story, following the debate each day, and that's, it's football, and it's debated incessantly in this country. I understand why sometimes there's that fans can feel that the media are after their clubs. I mean, in one way, most journalists would argue that if the fans of all clubs think that we're after their club, then somehow, we're doing their job properly. I mean, it's also a fact of modern media life is that there is. So let's take the big six clubs here, if you want. In this day and age of the media, when it's expanded far beyond newspapers and the Premier League, there is an inordinate amount, if you like, of focus upon the biggest clubs because they've got the global followings, and that means that a newspaper story is going to be looked at online globally rather than just, with all due respect, in Huddersfield or Watford or whatever, and that's nowadays. The English national newspapers cover Real Madrid and Barcelona more than they cover half of the Premier League, because their remit has changed, if you like, in this new age of digital media.
I'll ask you a question then, just on that, because I think it's quite relevant because of what's been discussed and debated on social media over the last sort of week with the Der Spiegel stuff. If Manchester City were owned by Americans, do you think they'd get an easier ride?
It depends. No, I don't know.
No, you don't.
No, I don't think I don't think there's any issue about the race or otherwise of the ownership. But it is a fact, that Abu Dhabi is wealth beyond beyond comprehension almost, isn't it?
What about the incessant claims to Abu Dhabi's human rights, treatment of women and migrant workers, and that has come through so many articles over this last week and in Der Spiegel with links to Amnesty International and things like that. Your thoughts on that? If it's not, if it's nothing to do with the fact that it's about Abu Dhabi and their owners.
Look, personally, I've never written about that, but news organisations are going to examine the source. Manchester City is huge news. It's got the world's most famous football manager. It's got some of the world's most famous and talented players, and it's connected to Abu Dhabi. Now, news organisations, and I would guess it's probably you're referring more to items on the news pages and features pages rather than on the sports pages. Which is where I've spent my life, they are going to examine that, in the same way that, if you like, the Glazers' corporate strategy at United is examined in the financial pages and in the news pages as well. You know, it's
not a great deal, to be honest.
The media looks at things, you know, and tries to discover, you know, what the background is and what the backdrop is, you know. So
well, my argument to that would be, John, the two journalists in particular, well, three, maybe Jonathan Norcroft as well, but Martin Samuel's been banging on about FFP. He's been talking about Man City and everything else, and he's been objective in his comments, and City fans completely accept his point of view. You've also got Ollie Holt, who wrote a piece just recently and was having a little bit of a dig, and was, you know, there was a reference or inference in there with regards to the fact that, you know, if City have done something wrong, they should be punished and blah, 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 blah. And City fans accept it because it's objective. There's no these words are not being used in there, these references, these almost that comes across as sly digs at Manchester City and their ownership and everything else. They don't use that terminology. They're actually very objective in what they say, and most City fans will look at it, read it and go, fair enough, can't say anything against that. It's when things are written by certain people and certain papers that City fans straight away gets their back up and say, look, sly dig comment again, sly dig headline, sly dig this, sly dig that. That is what pisses people off, and they go, is that? And then I know you've got a sub-editor who might write the headline and everything else, and I understand that, but the words sometimes that are used within it, it comes across as like, you know, yes, I'll piss off the City fans, but I'll be popular amongst the masses, the other team's fans and things like that. That's what annoys people. I think we're all grown.
I know this may be difficult to believe, but it's not as sophisticated as that. You know, it's people sit down to write pieces, often at high speed, you know, against tight deadlines. They then go through a very quick editing process. It's like, well, you know,
these are not match reports.
Well,
they're not match reports. Sometimes you've got plenty of time. I know journalists, so I know when they're on a tight deadline and they'll email. Someone emailed me something last night and said, "Can't chat. I'm on a deadline until 9 o'clock. I've been working on it all day." So it's not like you've got 10 minutes to write something out and go, "Shit, I wrote this, but God, I wish I wouldn't have." Sometimes these articles I'm talking about are not match reports. They are something that somebody has saved up days worth and worked on, and yet still choose to use that language. So that is very subjective.
Like I said, it's like lots of you know, for want of a better word, conspiracy theories. You know, that I can't, knowing, you know, the majority of football journalists in the country and how they work. There really isn't any intention or program of using certain language to take sly digs at things. You know, as opposed to that, newspapers use robust language. You know, they always have. You know, they are robust, hard-hitting products. You know, but I could, you know, you can react to that. I mean, it's the privilege, if you like, or the right of fans, readers, to react to the use of certain language in the way that they see fit. But all I would say to that is okay, you can be upset with it, but it's really not part of some great conspiracy to keep having digs at City in any way possible. It comes from the attempt to be robust and to be varied in the use of terminology and language. You know, I'd find it hard to believe that, you know, lots that journalists do. You know, journalists are wrong about things. Lots of it comes out in a way that you know, or is viewed in a way that when you're writing a piece, it doesn't occur to you that people are going to view it in a certain way, because, you know, you're not being partisan about it. You know, we are all football fans as well. I would say we're very successful in setting that aside when we come to work, and in fact, people are probably more critical of their own clubs in a way, if anything. You know, but that's another issue. I'll take your point about you could when there is a lot of focus on the club as there is now, then you might feel that there is some sort of campaign or whatever, but it's not as sophisticated as that. It really is. It's a reaction to events, as they happen, and an interpretation of them, and then it moves on. It's not. There isn't a great scheme at work.
But I mean, I get that. I do understand that. But maybe it's time that journalists started to actually have a good long think about the type of terminology that they use for that sole purpose, or do they don't care because actually that's going to get me a lot of publicity, it's going to get me a lot of tweets, a lot of hits on social media, gets me invited onto programs, blah 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 blah. One in particular I just pulled out from your sort of back catalogue on Twitter. In 2015, you posted 52.7 million outlay on class. Looks superb business next to City's ludicrous sterling splurge. Well, that was 2015. I think these were on players like.
Oh, well,
Bastian
I couldn't have been proven more wrong, could I? Yeah,
But again, instead of using the terminology ludicrous, why not just put 52.7 million outlay on class? Looks superb business next to City's sterling purchase. Why use ludicrous splurge? This is what I mean. It sets you up. This is what social media does. At the time that you put that out, people look at that and go, ludicrous? What? Sterling is British. United have spent 52.7 million on what? 3 old players who are garbage and are going to be garbage. And as it's proved out, look where Sterling is today and where's the likes of Bastian Schweinsteiger.
Well, so my assessment of him then has been proven wrong. I mean, the use of that word is a debate. You're trying to reinforce. You're reinforcing your point.
Language. It's the language. It's not the assessment.
I mean, look, you're going to find.
I turned around and said Emerick Laporte at the beginning of the season. I said he still needs to improve on certain areas. I got it in the net from a load of City fans going, "Oh, they prove you're wrong now, Andy." And I'm going, "Well, we're only 11 games in, 12 games in. Let's wait till the end of the season. He's playing brilliantly." So it's a comment. I didn't turn around and say ridiculous money that City have spent on Emerick Laporte, blah, blah. It's the terminology that journalists use. That's what pisses me off.
I'll explain why. Journalists use those kind of words because
it generates clicks.
It's a debate. It's not about generating. It's not. Believe me, it's not. Journalists,
Sorry, I disagree with you.
Well, we'll have to disagree on that then, because you're making a point and you want to reinforce it. That's why journalists use hard-hitting language, because they want to make their point in a powerful and emphatic way.
Well, they're not intelligent enough to use the right language, correct language, proper grammar. Are they not that intelligent that they can't put their point across in a perfect way without using ridiculous statements and comments and wordage? It's such a weak excuse. It's an excuse. I'm sorry, I disagree with you on this, John. But anyway, listen, we're going to have to wrap this up because we're almost at the hour mark. So I just want to say a massive thank you to John Dillon for doing this. He didn't need to come on, and I don't think many journalists would have done. So I want to say a massive thank you for him to come on, speak about different areas of what was said on Talk Sport. Also, the fact that I've asked him some questions, some difficult questions, and he's answered them honestly. But I just want to give the final word to John and say, John, to the Man City fans who are watching this video and the football fans, the final word is over to you about why we're here.
Well, look, thank you for having me on to try to explain my leaden-footed blunder and to apologise to people. I appreciate that, and I do hope you seem to have understood where I'm coming from, and I do hope others will see it that way. Further to that, I'd separate that from the other football matters we've been discussing, and I guess that this we can't. It's like trying to solve the equation of football, isn't it? We're going to argue and debate about football forevermore, aren't we? And as long as people are going to disagree wildly about things, but in the end, it's we're doing that because it's the game we love and that we're completely wrapped up in and have been since children. So, you know, I hope people see that the two issues there are separated, and if they don't agree with me on some of the other things, that's a different debate from the comments on TalkSport, for which I once again apologise. Yeah.
Just one last thing. Somebody messaged me earlier. Are you going to, on Twitter, are you going to officially apologise to David Silva?
Well, look, I've spoken with City. I mean, I didn't infer that I'm not sure. Would he even be aware of it? You know, I mean, he moves in a rarefied circle away from me. You know, if people feel that's necessary, yes, I will do it. Yes, yeah. If that's
me personally, I think it would come across to Man City fans. You know,
you're right. I mean, I'm thinking
as another step.
Yeah,
another step.
I'm thinking about what you're saying here, and yeah, I guess you're right. So yes, I will. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, John Dillon. Listen, I know it's been tough, and you know, these things happen in life. We've all been there where we've said things that's been taken out of context, or have been blown out of proportion, or people have challenged us on because it's the right thing to do. And all I'd like to say is thank you for being so open and honest, and hope City fans watch it, listen to what John said. And John's had his opportunity to put his point across, and is it time now to put this to bed?